Good morning, everyone. My name is Emma. I wanted to welcome you all to our webinar today on automating performance tests with Taurus. Before I hand it over to our presenter, Oren, I just have a few announcements to have, and I know a few people are still arriving as well. So just to let you know, the webinar is going to be recorded, so everyone will get a recording in the next coming days for you to have. At the end of the webinar, you'll also have time to ask questions. You should see a tab on your GoToWebinar screen where you can ask questions throughout the webinar, and we'll get to as many as we can towards the end of the webinar, and anything we don't get to, we'll try and reach out in the next few days as well. One last thing, at the end of today's webinar, we have a short survey. If you can just take those 30 seconds to fill it in, that would be wonderful because it really helps us for future webinars. And if you'd like, you can also request a one-on-one session to learn more with one of our performance engineers. Now I'd like to hand it over to Oren. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Oren.
Thank you very much. So the title will be Automating Performance Tests with Taurus. Now, before we kind of jump into the dashboard and get our hands dirty, it's important to explain why to automate your testing and why exactly is it important to automate your tests. So BlazeMeter, we're a performance and load testing tool, right? We do big load tests. We're able to scale up to hundreds of thousands, millions of concurrent users very seamlessly, literally with a click of a button. You also get very comprehensive reporting to analyze your graphs, to find bottlenecks, to view your KPI trends, understand if the bottlenecks are coming from the application side or from the server side. Now, on top of that, we also have integrations, APM integrations for integrating your monitoring tools like New Relic, Dynatrace, App Dynamics, CloudWatch, and we also have CI integrations, and this is going to be the main focus of the demo, and that's how you essentially automate your tests using a CI tool, continuous integration tool. This could be Jenkins, and that's the example I'll be giving, or any other CI tool out there. If it's Circle CI or literally anything that you're familiar with, you're able to trigger tests seamlessly. So up until now, people are very familiar with load testing of hundreds of thousands, millions of concurrent users trying to break your system, and that's with the waterfall test methodology. It's tradition that it's done towards the end of the development, so you're done developing the code, and then you test it, and you hope everything goes well, and you kind of pray, and if it goes well, awesome. If it doesn't, then you have to invest a lot of money, a lot of resources, go back, make changes, and find exactly what's causing the bottlenecks, and it makes it very difficult to scale up and to create apps that perform very well and that have scalability. So the reason to automate your tests is what we call shifting left. So to test earlier within the development pipeline, instead of doing the old methodology, we were testing at the end, here you're testing much earlier. We have customers literally testing, 5 minutes after a line of code is created. They're already running tests. Now, testing earlier and more often, what does this give you? It gives you the ability to find bottlenecks very early on. Instead of finding them at the end, here you're finding out during development. So you're able to run tests, schedule builds to run on a nightly basis, on a daily basis, even on an hourly basis, right? Every time you make a commit, every time you update your repository, you're able to run tests seamlessly in BlazeMeter and automate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into BlazeMeter and show exactly how this is done. Okay, so this is the BlazeMeter dashboard. If we go to a.blazemeter.com. Okay, this is how the dashboard looks like. It doesn't matter if you're automating it with Taurus, if you're running it through our GUI interface. You can see on the left all the recent test runs. On the right, you can see the recent updated test, the usage report. And now in a true CI pipeline, right, if you're doing every build, you'll see you obviously have many different developers using BlazeMeter. Well, maybe you can have QA using JMeter, and many people will be running tests into JMeter. So you can see this is my account, so of course it's all run by me. But you'd see which tester ran which test, the name of the build, if you want it to be the name of the commit, so the name of the commit, and all the reporting is here, and they could be, developers and QA located in different locations around the world. They're all using the same platform, and they're all running their tests in JMeter. So when we click Create Test, you have a few different options, right? The first one is JMeter, right? Now, before I jump into Taurus, I'm going to explain JMeter. So if anybody's new to performance testing, JMeter is the leading open source tool in performance and load testing. Right, and it could test literally anything that has HTTP, HTTPS requests. Now, the next is the URL API test. So if it's a very basic URL, very basic API, you'll do the URL API test. The multi-test gives you the option to test from different geographic locations around the world, to run tests at the same time, multiple scenarios, multiple different network providers, all at the same time. Now I'll be focusing on Taurus. Now, what is Taurus? Taurus is an open source framework which we created to create your tests using code. So in YAML and in JSON format, you're able to create tests. So it's not a replacement for JMeter. So even if you don't know JMeter, if you're a developer, for example, and you don't want to learn JMeter, although it's very, very easy and we have the JMeter Academy, you could completely create your scripts using Taurus. And it will create the JMeter script for you in the background. You could also use it as an executor, not only to run JMeter, you could also use Taurus to run Gatling, Locus.io, the Grinder, Selenium. So it's really, really cool. It gives you a lot of flexibility. Especially, if you're not familiar with JMeter, you could use it. If you want to leverage existing scripts, you could use it. If you have some of your team knows JMeter, some of them doesn't know JMeter, some of them maybe use the Grinder, Selenium. It's all supported through Taurus, and it can all be automated using your CI tool using Taurus onto JMeter. Now, when you download Taurus, when you install it locally, it will actually download JMeter in your local machine because it's using JMeter in the background. So even though you're already executing, using YAML or JSON, it will still create the script for you, a JMX script, which you could afterwards go ahead, download, and even play around with in JMeter. So before we jump into how it's all automated using your CI tool, I'm going to show exactly how a script looks like and how to run it locally. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with our Chrome extension. If we go to blazedemo.com, this is a demo site that we have. Now we have a Chrome extension, and now what the Chrome extension does is it records all your HTTP and HTTPS requests. And this is good because I could afterwards go ahead and export this to JMeter, or I could even export this into YAML and get my script, a file that I could actually already run with Taurus, and I don't have to create it. I don't have to create my JMeter from scratch. I don't need to create my YAML file from scratch because it's recording all my HTTP, HTTPS requests. So let's go ahead and click record. Give this a name, click record, and now it's recording my requests. Of course, this is a very basic application. You can see I'm just making some post requests. Now, if you are doing anything more advanced like authentication or dynamic parameters, this of course can be done in JMeter, and it could also be done in Taurus, and it's very, very easily done. The Chrome extension wouldn't do this for me. Again, it only records my request, so let's go ahead and stop the recording. Okay, I could download it, I could edit it. I could even edit it in Selenium and click play and actually view exactly all the requests which I made, which is very cool to understand exactly what exactly it recorded. Let's click edit your script. You can see here the requests that it recorded. Some post requests. I could click play and run it using Selenium, but I'm just going to go ahead and download this to YAML. I could download this to JMeter as well and use my JMX script and run this with BlazeMeter. I'm going to click Taurus, and you can see it downloaded a YAML file. So let's go ahead and show you an example how I could use YAML with Taurus. So I already obviously installed Taurus on my local machine before the presentation. It's already installed. You could download Taurus from gettaurus.org. It's an open source framework, just like JMeter. And again, when you download Taurus, it'll install JMeter for you. Okay, so an example of a YAML file is this. Okay, so essentially right now, this is an example that I actually recorded using the Chrome extension. You can see it's using JMeter up here by default. I'm setting the concurrency, the ramp up, the hold for the scenario, all in the YAML file. It's all human readable. And here is the scenario. It's very simple. I'm going to blazedemo.com, the site that I showed you before, and then blazedemo.com/vacation. This is obviously a very simple example, but just to show you how you could run it in Taurus. By the way, back here, you can see other examples of Taurus files that I have. I have many different YAML files, past failure criterias, I have some Python scripts, which I could all run using Taurus. So let's do bzt. This is the Taurus command. Test.yaml. This is the YAML file that I just showed you here. And I'm able to run this locally, right? Right now I'm not even using BlazeMeter. bzt is the Taurus command. Test.yaml is the YAML file. And now it runs locally. Just like JMeter and the other open source tool can run locally, so could Taurus. And here's how the reporting looks like. You know, I like saying it kind of looks like 1980s reporting. But again, you do see some sort of reporting. This is all done locally, not in BlazeMeter. And you do see on the left some graph. You could see the users coming in. You could see response time, latency, the labels, and it's all really cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And instead of running it locally, I'm going to go ahead and run it in BlazeMeter. So how's that done? I do bzt. Again, that's the Taurus command. Test.yaml is the same YAML file before, but this time -cloud. So -cloud is the API key of my BlazeMeter account. Okay, so every account, if you go ahead and open up a free account or a paid account, you have your own API key. You could find it in the settings. It's very easily found. We have documentation exactly how to find it. Now, using that API key, you're able to trigger your Taurus test to run in BlazeMeter, in your BlazeMeter account. So I already have it configured here in my local terminal. So I'm just doing -cloud. That's the API key. And it runs it in my BlazeMeter account. So again, let's do bzt test.yaml. Now, instead of running it locally right now, like I did before, it will be running it in BlazeMeter. The benefit of this, obviously, I'll use BlazeMeter to scale up. I'll use BlazeMeter for the reporting, and it will save all the reporting for me. And that's very critical when integrating your CI pipeline and running many tests with You'd want it all to be in BlazeMeter. That way you could view the KPI trends, compare the reporting, and it's all saved. So you could literally view tests that you ran 5 years ago and then view the reporting compared to the test running today. And you can see already a window opened up in my browser. This is the BlazeMeter test that I triggered from my local terminal. The second this machine is spun up, I'll be able to view the reporting in real time. And I'll see the nice, beautiful BlazeMeter reporting, which is very different than the reporting you saw before, the regular Taurus reporting. Okay, so before we jump into the reporting and kind of how BlazeMeter looks like in our nice reporting, I'm going to show an example right now how I can use my CI tool to trigger this test and to automate it. In this case, I'm going to be using my Jenkins. That's what I have. But again, it doesn't matter what CI tool you're using. It's really the same concept. You're able to trigger your tests using API. So this is my Jenkins account. Okay. Again, if you're using another CI tool, It's all very similar. It looks exactly the same pretty much. Jenkins is probably the most commonly used CI tool. Okay, so I'm going to show an example of a build that I have called guide demo. Okay, so if we go to the config, you can see exactly what I have here. So in this example, I'm using my GitHub repository, right? Doesn't matter if you're using Git, GitLab, any repository in the world. My example, I'm using GitHub. And all my scripts are located in GitHub. There's a public GitHub account, and you can see I have some JMX scripts, which is JMeter. I have some Python, I have some YAML. Now what I'm doing here is I'm pointing it to my GitHub account, right? And here I have build triggers, right? Right now I have GitHub hook trigger GIT-SCM polling. That means every time I make a commit, right? Every time I make a save in my YAML file, I make a change, I click save, it will automatically commit it, it'll run it in BlazeMeter, it'll trigger it to run in BlazeMeter. And that's what I want, right? Because obviously if I'm making changes in my YAML file, I'm making a change, I want the test to run. So that's currently what I have configured. GitHub hook trigger GIT-CM polling every time I make a commit in my repository. In this case, in my GitHub, I make a save. It'll automatically run the test in BlazeMeter. Now, the sky's the limit. We have customers doing crazy things, right? You could literally have tests running every minute. You could have tests running from a different geographic location every hour. You could run a build on a periodic basis, on a nightly basis. You can, every time you run a specific test, another test will run with the pull SCM. Here you could, make a scheduler and to schedule it whenever you want to. Okay, so this is how it's really automated. And now over here in the execution shell, this is the most important part. So you can see exactly what I'm doing here. BZT is the Taurus command. This is the exact same command that I did locally in my local terminal. The YAML file that I'm executing is execution YAML. And let me show you how that looks like. It's located in my GitHub, in my repository. So here we go, execution YAML. And again, like the other YAML file, like test.yaml that I showed you before, it's very similar. Over here, you can see I'm setting the concurrency, the hold for the ramp up, even different geographic locations, all in YAML. You can see US East is Virginia, US West is California, Europe West, I believe, is Ireland, and this is London. So I'm generating multiple locations, the ramp up, the hold for, all in YAML. And you can see the scenario. It's very straightforward. I'm going to go to blazedemo.com. This is the site that I showed before, which I recorded with the Chrome extension. And I'm making a post request from Paris to Buenos Aires. Again, anything you could do in JMeter could be done in Taurus and using YAML. So if it's authentication, dynamic parameters, all this could be done in YAML. And it's very straightforward, very simple. And the nice thing is I don't need any JMeter experience at all, right? I could just be a developer. I know YAML, awesome. That doesn't need to be a bottleneck to run my test if I don't know JMeter. I could simply use Taurus and use the YAML to run all my tests. And you could even see here I'm setting the workspace, the name of the test, performance test 1K. Okay. Now the next thing I'm doing the API key. So module BlazeMeter token key. Again, every BlazeMeter account has its own API key. My API key I'm obviously hiding over here in the bindings because I don't want everybody to see my own personal API key to have the ability to run tests in my account. But you could literally just drop your API key right here. I'm hiding it in the bindings. Now modules report name. You can see over here that I'm doing something very advanced. The name of the test will be my commit ID. That means, I have different commits. I could see my commits in my repository, in my GitHub account. I'll see my different commits in Jenkins, and I'll be able to see if it's a commit that I'm running over and over and over and over again in BlazeMeter. I'll be able to go ahead and see, okay, how does this commit look like over time? And this is why I'm doing it over here. I'm actually giving it the name of my commit ID. Again, not necessarily. You could give it any name you want to give it. And if not, we'll just give it a default name as well. I'll give it a Taurus cloud test. So you don't even need to do this at all. And then dash cloud is to run it in the cloud. I could essentially go to my YAML file, in this case, this YAML file over here, and make a change, right? And click save. And it'll automatically run it in BlazeMeter. How I have it configured right now is every time a commit is made, it'll automatically trigger it to run in BlazeMeter. Let's just go ahead and trigger it manually. So let's go ahead and click save. Okay, click build now. And here you have a heartbeat. You can see build number 318. This test is spinning up. You can see all my other tests. If you see red, that means it didn't pass my criteria. Let's go to build 318 and see what we have here. So we can go to the console output. And you can see it's really cool. So what's happening here, it's using my repository. In this case, it's using GitHub. And you could even see it's giving it the commit ID over here. And then over here, it's still this long number over here. This is the commit ID. And then it even gives me a link to my test running in BlazeMeter. So you could click on that test. And now you can see the test running in BlazeMeter. And it runs up pretty quickly. So in 2-3 minutes already, I'll see my test running in BlazeMeter. The second all these engines are spun up, I'll be able to see my real-time reporting. And right now I can see all these different locations. These are the locations that were in my YAML file. So remember, I configured over here all the different geographic locations: Virginia, California, Ireland. So over here you can see these are the locations: Virginia, California, Ireland, London. And then I'll be able to see the real-time reporting. And what does that give you? So let me go ahead and show you an example of a report while this is spinning up. This is an example of a BlazeMeter report. You could obviously see, compared to Taurus locally or even JMeter locally, it's night and day, right? It's very, very easy. You could very easily understand what's happening here. Up on top, I could see the max amount of users, the average throughput, the error percent, response time. And down below, you're able to see two very comprehensive graphs. And just an example, if you understand what's happening here, the blue are the users. You can see the users ramping up. And you can see over here even a bottleneck. So this is not obviously a high concurrency test. Usually when you automate your test and you're running every build in BlazeMeter, you don't necessarily need 5,000, 10,000 concurrent users running on a daily basis. You can be running a few hundred. This is exactly what I have here. And I can see, okay, I have a bottleneck. At 174 users, my hits per second, the requests on the server drop. Why does that happen? Because the response time goes from flat to spiking. So I could obviously identify that I have a bottleneck at 174 and pass this on. Now, better than that, I could even set thresholds. So I could set thresholds in my test. So for example, I could have a YAML file that would be a threshold that I'll run it with every YAML file with every commit that I make. And it's a standard. If the response time's ever over 5 seconds or 3 seconds, I'm notified. If the error percent is ever over a specific threshold, I'm notified. What does that enable you to do? So instead of you having to go ahead and analyze every single graph that you run in BlazeMeter, you could say, okay, I'm running all these tests in BlazeMeter. It's all automated. I'm going to go ahead and check why it didn't pass and see what happened only if a threshold isn't passed. So I'm notified. We have Slack hookups. So you can be able to hook it up to your Slack, to your email. You're notified. Okay, the response time is too high in this commit that you made. You're able to go ahead and go into that specific test and see, okay, what's happening here? How come my threshold wasn't passed on this test, on this day? And to make changes and to run the test again, and to make changes and run the test again. And this is shifting left. This is having an automated pipeline where continuously testing using Taurus to automate your tests, and shifting left. So testing very early on and finding bottlenecks very early on within the development pipeline. Now, this is an example of a test. By the way, this is the real-time reporting. So you can see this test spun up 2 minutes ago. And you can see the name of the test is very long, because again, this is the commit ID. the same commit ID that I have from my repository and what I see in Jenkins. And you can see this is real-time reporting. So the users are ramping up. It's a little bit boring right now. But the test is running in real time, which is cool, and I could share this in real time as well. Now, when I'm running and automating your tests in BlazeMeter, you're able to view the KPI trends. And this is a great example. So over here, again, BlazeMeter is saving all the reporting for you. So you're able to see the last 25 tests, the last 50 tests, the last 100 tests, and to see how the test is performing over time, right? Is the response time going up over time? Is it going down? Is it remaining the same? You could see, for example, this test was obviously had a very long response time. I could go in to the same reporting I saw before, get a deep dive into, okay, what's causing this? Is the geographic location? I could use an APM integration, see, okay, with the server side, how does my New Relic look like at the time? What does my server look like when it's under that load? Identify if it's coming from the application side or from the server side. What are the errors like? I could even deep dive and get a waterfall report. I could see every different request, in my script. I'm able to view the response time for that request. For example, if we go to this report over here, in my request stats, you can see over my timeline report, I can see all my requests in my script. And this is the nice thing, right? It doesn't matter if you're using a Taurus script, YAML, or you're using a JMeter script, you're able to view all your requests in BlazeMeter. So BlazeMeter is simply running these scripts in the cloud. So over here, for example, if I want to see, okay, what's causing my bottleneck, I could see, okay, what's the average response time for each different request? And you could see, okay, which page have the overall long response time? It's the confirmation page. It's the green. So I know, let's say, okay, the confirmation page is giving me issues compared to the average latency of the confirmation page, and see exactly how long the response time is since the first byte is made. Okay, so that's an example on how I, run it and trigger it using Taurus and BlazeMeter. Now, just to focus more on Taurus, because that's the main topic of the demo, let's just go back into my Jenkins. Let's go back to my Jenkins. I'm going to show you some other examples of what I do with Taurus, which is really cool. Again, like I said, the sky's the limit. So, authentication, dynamic parameters, it's all done through Taurus, and you can do it all through Taurus and run multiple YAML files at the same time. And that's the example I gave, with running a threshold YAML with your YAML script at the same time, and that way you're notified if your threshold doesn't pass. Another cool example, before I showed you exactly how I could create my test using YAML. Now, what you're also able to do is leverage an existing script. So if you're already using JMeter, you're already using Gatling, you say, okay, I don't want to create my scripts from scratch using YAML. Excellent, you don't need to. You can simply call it and use an existing script that you already have. Over here, you can see I'm using Selenium in this one. I'm going to show you an example with a Gatling test. Let's go to my configure. Okay, so it's the same idea. I have the trigger of GIT CM polling. Now this time it's running a YAML file called BZT Gatling YAML. And even this is also a great example, pass fail config YAML. So it's also running a threshold YAML. So let's take a look at these two YAMLs so you get an idea of how they look like. Over here I'm leveraging a Gatling script. So let's go into my repository. So Gatling existing YAML. And over here you can see I'm leveraging an existing script, a Scala script. And here's the executor, Gatling, not JMeter. I'm setting the concurrency over here, or the ramp up. I'm even setting steps. What's a step? I'll show you that through the BlazeMeter GUI. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. I'll go to an example of a test. A step is during my ramp up, I'm even setting steps. So I don't want it to be my ramp up to go up very smoothly, but I want it to have steps. So I could see, okay, if it breaks, on what step did it break on? And this is a great example Right over here, you can see this is how a ramp up looks like. This is, again, the JMeter GUI. So if I decide I don't want to automate my tests, I simply want to upload my Taurus script or upload my Gatling or upload my JMeter script. You can do it through the GUI interface as well. Over here, I'm adding steps. So you see 3 steps. That's what I have in my script right now. See steps 3. I could add, 10 steps and see how that looks like, which is really cool. And it's definitely recommended if you're looking to kind of see exactly at what step your test is breaking at. And again, different locations. And this is an example of how I could run a Gatling script in JMeter and automate that, leveraging an existing script that I have. Now, what I have also here is pass-fail config. This is kind of even a more advanced level where I'm not only running the Gatling existing YAML, I'm also running a pass-fail config YAML. And this is the threshold that we discussed earlier on. I don't want to go ahead and analyze every single test. I mean, I can, and it's great, but it's definitely time consuming. And my developers want to focus on developing code and only going in and checking what's happening if something's out of the ordinary. So let's go to pass-fail config YAML. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, and you can see over here, I'm stopping the test that's failed. If I have over 2% errors, and this is a pass-fail config, and this is a very simple pass-fail config, and I'm simply running this, with my YAML file that I'm running. And let's go again. Obviously, I can make a change. Simply click save, but let's go ahead and trigger this. Let's do build now. Let's wait for the heartbeat, and it will run in JMeter. Okay, so I guess this has an issue with this script. I don't see it's building. But essentially, yeah, here it is. It started. Number 26. We could go here, right, see the console output, what's happening. Again, using my repository, you can see it's using 2 YAML files, Gatling existing and pass-fail config. Again, with the same idea with my commit ID, the name of the test will be my commit ID, which is very cool. It makes it very easy when I want to go ahead and see the KPI trends. I can say, okay, how did the trend look like for this specific commit? Okay, and you can see it finished as a failure, so it didn't pass, which is really cool, and that's why it's red. Okay, so I showed you an example. You have lots of flexibility. You're able to run different executors. That's the benefit of using Taurus. You have a lot of flexibility. You can use Gatling, Locust, the Grinder, even Selenium, JMeter, and automate it all to run in JMeter. Okay, you're able to get notifications if thresholds don't pass through Slack, through email. This way you're able to go ahead and share this. So I could send, for example, if I'm doing a testing for a customer, I could give the customer access to my account to only the reporting, or I could say I don't even want to give them access to my account. I'll simply send them a Slack notification, and they simply get a link to the test I want to share with them. You're able to go to that one test, view that test, and view the reporting of that test that did not pass. And this is the beauty of automating your tests, and this is kind of bringing testing to the next level and shifting left, testing earlier and more often within the development pipeline. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm sure there's a bunch of questions from your end. We could kind of, you could write questions in the chat box if there are any questions, and we'll be more than happy to help.
Thanks so much, Oren. So I guess we're going to start taking some questions, but before I just want to remind you that at the end of the webinar, as soon as you close the webinar, there's going to be a quick survey. It's going to take you 20-30 seconds. If you can just fill it in before, so we can get your feedback for upcoming webinars, future webinars. You can also request more follow-up as well. So anything, it really, really helps us for providing the best valuable content for you guys for future webinars. So let's go look at some of the questions. So someone asks, is it mandatory to have JMeter to run Taurus?
Is it mandatory to have BlazeMeter to run Taurus? So the answer for that is no. So, just like that's what I showed in the beginning of the presentation, right? Just like you could run JMeter completely locally, right, and use your own local resources and use the standard reporting, you're also able to do that with Taurus, and that's what I did in the beginning. If you remembered, I ran bzt test.yaml, bzt test.yaml, and again, I'm not doing dash cloud here. It's running completely locally, but I'm obviously running into many bottlenecks. The first bottleneck is the reporting. You can obviously see the reporting is very poor. Like I said, it looks like 1980 reporting. It is running locally. It is running without BlazeMeter. But I wouldn't say that's even the biggest bottleneck. Obviously, it's a huge bottleneck analyzing your graphs, but you don't have the ability to view the KPI trends. And when you're automating your tests, that's a very, very critical part, to view the KPI trends to see how the test is performing over time. So that's why you'd want BlazeMeter to save all the tests for you and to see how the test is performing over time. And also leveraging BlazeMeter to get notifications so you could go in and see exactly why it didn't pass. But if you're running one specific test using Taurus, you're able to technically, right? I don't know why you'd actually want to, but it's possible, right? And this is the reporting, and you do get valuable data. You will run into a bottleneck when scaling up. You're limited to your local resources, whatever you have in your local machine. You're limited to the reporting, and you're limited to the integration. So if I'm wanting to integrate right now with an APM tool to see how my server side's performing, that's impossible to do. If I want to integrate right now with my CI tool and trigger test through API, you can't do that. And again, if I'm having any issues, right, I need support, maybe even professional services, I don't have that, right? But when you run a test in BlazeMeter, not only do you have the reporting, the scalability, the integrations, you also have top of the line support if you're running into any issues, if something goes wrong, if you need any additional help, you have BlazeMeter to help you out. And that's a resource that you don't have when doing everything locally. I hope that answers your question.
All right. Can I run multiple scripts in the same time with Taurus?
Yes, that's done very easily. And by the way, I did that example right now. So let me go back to the example. It was my last test that I ran. Let me go back. So in the example that I ran, let's go to my configure. I ran two scripts, right? I ran one YAML file that was called Gatling existing YAML. This was a Gatling script that I was running. And then I ran a pass-fail config YAML. So this is considered a different script, right? In this case, this script, all it really did was make a threshold for me, so I'll be notified if it passes or fails. But of course, you could run, many, many different YAML files all at the same time. So this was an example where I am running multiple YAML files at the same time. Okay. So I see there's another question here. Is there any restriction on the number of engines to be used in testing in BlazeMeter via Taurus? Okay, so that's a very good question. So that's kind of on a licensing level question. Is there any restriction on the engine? So that'll obviously depend what plan you're on, right? For example, if you're on our basic plan, then you only have one engine at a time. So there's a big restriction. You can't run multiple different geographic locations. You can't run multiple YAML files at the time. You're limited to one engine at a time. The Pro plan, here you have 20 engines. And on an enterprise plan, you have, you could have, up to 100, even 300 engines, depending on what plan you're on, which is, obviously more than enough. I don't think, anybody needs to run more than 300 engines. This is a lot of firepower.
Great. We have another question about, is it possible to upload a CSV file in my Taurus script?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Like I said earlier, anything could be done in Taurus, right? So if you're familiar with JMeter and dynamic parameters and using CSV with JMeter, that also could be done with Taurus, and I'll even show you an example on how that looks like. So I have to search for it. It should be right in here. Gatling, pass field config. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so for sure one of these files have a CSV file, but one of the benefits of Taurus is that, again, it's all open source. So no, this is not the most professional thing, but you could search it on Google. CSV Taurus. And we have a Taurus Academy, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that until now. So if you're looking to learn more about Taurus and kind of get started, we have a Taurus Academy, which is really, really awesome and brings you from a very basic level to very advanced level. And this is an example of a CSV file. Over here, I'm using authentication. So I have a CSV file pages and a CSV file logins. And this is an example on how I'm using, for usernames and password to create authentication in my Taurus script. So obviously, I'm able to use CSV files, and this is how it's done. But great question. Okay, see, we have another question over here. Why do we use Taurus when we can directly upload JMeter scripts in BlazeMeter? Okay, a great question. So I answered this in the beginning. Why do you use Taurus if you could use JMeter? So Taurus gives you a few benefits, right? So let's say I don't know JMeter, and I want to write everything in code. This could be done using Taurus. You're able to create your test completely in code. Let's say I want to leverage not only JMeter, I want to run other scripts and leverage, Selenium and JMeter at the same time. That could also be done with Taurus. Let's say I want more flexibility, and this is really when it comes to CI testing. So I'm saying JMeter is really awesome, and whoever knows BlazeMeter knows that we're probably the biggest fans out there of JMeter. We're constantly contributing to the JMeter community. We have a JMeter Academy. We're creating JMeter plugins, and we're very, very big in JMeter. Again, Taurus is just think of it as a wrapper, so it's still running JMeter, right? It's just creating the JMeter script for you and running your existing JMeter script. You can upload JMeter scripts directly to BlazeMeter. It's awesome. It's very, very easy through the GUI interface. But again, when automating your tests, Taurus gives you a lot more flexibility with setting assertions, having them all in your repository, making very easy changes. And it definitely gives you more flexibility when you want to use it across really your whole CI pipeline. You have a bunch of developers, QA, and integrating and connecting between all of them. Taurus is a framework which makes that much more smooth and much more easy. You can use JMeter. Taurus is just another way to run your tests.
I see we're having like a lot of questions right now. So I am just going to wrap a few things up. I want to thank Oren once again just for for his presentation. And like he said, we'll be able to follow up with everyone about any technical questions you might have. And if you can once again fill in the survey, and you can also have a moment there where you can also add any questions and notes as well, further questions that you might have, and we'll be able to follow up with you there as well, along with requesting a more follow-up in-depth session. Just to let you know about some next steps that we have. If you don't already, you can create a free account at blazemeter.com. You can follow us on all social channels. That our Twitter handle is @blazemeter. And check out our wonderful resources page. We have all our previous webinars on our blazemeter.com resources, and the performance testing blog where we have lots of articles about Taurus, Jenkins, JMeter, Selenium, all open source tools, how-tos, etc. It's a great tool for you to be able to have. So once again, I want to thank Oren so much for his time. I really appreciate it, and thank everyone for joining us today. Like I said before, we're going to be sending out a recording of the webinar, and please be in touch if you have any questions you might have. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.